But now we're going to move on to the final mini panel, or should I call it debate, or struggle, between print and digital. Now, have you decided who's going first? It looks like David is. Is that okay?
I think so.
Thank you. So I'm inviting up our co-host here, David Gross, who is visiting us from New York, where he is president of Artifex Press, the name of which has been mentioned throughout the day, who are, well, David's going to tell you what they do. They publish online catalogue raisonnés. David's going to present, then I'm going to invite Lucy Myers from Lund Humphreys to talk, and then very quickly, again, we want to open it out to you. Okay, so David, over to you.
Okay. Hello. So I am David Gross. I'm the president and editor-in-chief of Artifex Press. Prior to this role, I had several other jobs in art publishing. I was the editor-in-chief of artinfo.com. I was a catalog editor at the Guggenheim Museum. I was managing editor of the literary and arts quarterly Grand Street. And all of these positions have involved some digital publishing, so I've had plenty of opportunity to learn about the advantages and challenges of this approach. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'll start by describing some of the initial assumptions that we had as we founded Artifex Press in 2009, and I'll use this as a way to share some general thoughts about digital publishing. And then I'll turn to a more in-depth discussion of Artifex Press and share from our actual experiences over the past several years. You know what, the clicker's not working. There we go. Okay, apologies. So we started Artifex Press more than 6 years ago as a publisher dedicated to catalogue raisonné. There's a rich history dating back several centuries to Edmé François Gerson's Rembrandt catalogue made in 1751 of creating catalogue raisonné as books. But my colleagues and I created Artifex Press because we believed that the future of CR production was digital. Some of the initial insights that drove this belief are spelled out in the slide above. 6 years later, we've seen much wider adoption of the concept of the digital CR. Okay, I jumped ahead a little quick. These are the challenges associated with digital publishing. The biggest is the fact that art books are often quite beautiful and prestigious objects, and both authors and readers are reluctant to give them up. Second point above is a strange paradox. One of the biggest advantages of digital publishing, which is the ability to update and correct information, causes some people to think of it as less solid. Third, long-term digital preservation is a major issue in library science, and one for which there's not yet a simple solution. All technology needs some degree of maintenance to not grow obsolete, but what happens if the people responsible for a specific technology no longer support it? Librarians are working on solutions to catalog and capture websites, but this is still a new field that will surely expand dramatically. We take this very seriously at Artifex Press, and we're working with our technical team and third-party archives to achieve a lasting solution. Finally, oh geez, sorry. I apologize. Finally, the final point, which Susan brought up in an earlier panel, we have to be realistic about the cost savings associated with digital catalogs. Production, marketing, and distribution costs can certainly be reduced when pursuing digital publication, but CRs remain long-term projects requiring significant budgets, expenses associated with clearing rights to images, travel, and above all, the long-term commitment to a research staff do not go away because you elect to publish digitally. Because I've been involved in digital publishing for around 15 years, people often assume that I think it's better than book publishing. I don't. I remain a book reader, and I've seen enough digital publishing projects to know that they have their limitations. I think the argument that we were making with Artifex Press had little to do with larger claims about digital publishing. It was more modest than that. We simply realized that for a specific type of art publication, one that contains information that changes over time, and moreover, for the portion of that that is primarily a lengthy list of artworks, a database might simply be a better technology than a book. The ability to search and sort, to build interactive indices, and to create lists and keywords and other parameters offers all sorts of flexibility that's impossible to achieve in a bound book. So that's why we developed Artifacts Press. We began simply with an idea, and 6 years later, we've turned it into an ambitious publishing program. To date, we've released 3 catalog raisonnés for Chuck Close, Jim Dine, and Tim Hawkinson. We have some 18 in progress for artists both living and deceased. From day one, our project has proceeded along 2 paths simultaneously. First, we built software. Second, we developed a catalog raisonné research, editorial, and publication program. So I'll talk first about the technology. We've developed a patented online system that contains 3 parts: a private-facing artwork database with robust storage capacity. We think of this as a digital archive. A public-facing catalog raisonné, or the published book, and a publishing workflow uniting the 2 halves. This facilitates speedy updates while containing tools to ensure quality control of the information. What this means is that each catalog exists in 2 states simultaneously, and this sort of answers a question, Susan, that you brought up earlier. We have first a private archive for the editorial team, which can be used from the earliest stages of catalog research, and then when ready, there's the published catalog, a searchable, sortable, carefully edited catalog raisonné for the art-interested public. So the next 2 slides sort of illustrate this difference. First, we have a photograph of an inscription, which appears only in the digital archive. Second is how that information is represented for the public as the inscription line in an artwork caption. And I think you can imagine any number of other examples of this distinction between the front and back. The second half of our mission is a research, editorial, and publishing program. We were fortunate to be selected early on as publisher by the estates of Sol LeWitt, Agnes Martin, and by 2 living late career artists, Chuck Close and Jim Dine. I try always to be clear with colleagues that although our project relies on new technology, it does not represent some deliberate program of disruption. In fact, our goal has always been continuity. When we created Artifacts Press, we wanted to apply the same methodology that has been traditionally used to compile catalog raisonné, but to publish the results of our research in a more flexible manner that would be more responsive to the changing nature of the information we're gathering. We were proposing that the output would change, but the method would not. The editors we work with prepare their catalogs in the same way scholars publishing printed books would, with a combination of physical appraisal, archival research, intense organization, and skillful maneuvering of the personalities and politics of the art world to confirm information. We clear copyright as a book publisher would. We work with ARS, VAGA, and other artist rights organizations to obtain permissions. We try to track down photographers or their estates to seek permission to use a decades-old image. We do not take an aggressive position on fair use. Everything is rather traditional in this regard. As I mentioned, we've published 3 catalogs so far. We have several more in progress, which you can see listed here. We expected to launch Agnes Martin, Sol LeWitt, James Sienna, and Lucas Samar's catalogs within the next year, along with a second volume of the Chuck Close catalog and possibly some others. As our project has grown, we've developed several different models for how we work with collaborators. We've sponsored some catalogs ourselves. In other cases, we serve as a technology and publishing partner from the earliest research stages of a catalog until the eventual publication. In still others, we serve as something like a traditional publisher, taking a manuscript researched elsewhere and prepping it to be shared for the public. Finally, we're exploring the possibility of digitizing books that have already been printed. And some of our digital-born catalogs will eventually become printed books. We've gathered an advisory board of distinguished art professionals to help us out. This group is offering advice on issues ranging from digital preservation strategies to new cataloging projects to the launch of our subscription service, which is how we'll distribute these publications to academic and museum libraries, art institutions, and other interested parties. I'm going to return now to a point I made earlier. The research techniques that a catalog raisonné editor uses and the eventual content of the catalog will not change if your goal is to produce a book or a digital catalog. So what does change? Broadly speaking, we can mention these 4 things. Regarding production, I think the crucial point is that the same software used to compile the catalog can be used to publish it. This allows for a seamless transition from a research phase into editing for a publication phase. Regarding distribution, digital catalogs are accessible to anyone with an internet connection. We have thousands of users who are art historians, curators, art professionals, collectors, and general art enthusiasts. Our forthcoming subscription service will be accessible to institutional subscribers like academic and museum libraries, as well as individuals. So a catalog raisonné, which would typically have a very limited print run and might only appear in a few libraries in an entire country, can find a wider audience. Regarding how the catalog is eventually read, the flexibility of an interlinked database leaves many choices to the individual end user. A curator will use the catalog differently than a collector might, and the same publication can lend itself to multiple experiences more readily than a book that is read from front to back. Readers of the digital CR can experience the same body of work chronologically, thematically, by medium, by location. There's no limit to the number of images that can be published, and of course, catalogs can also include multimedia. But the final point, publishing, is where I really believe the ease and adaptability of digital technology makes the biggest difference. With a book, the editor has only one chance to bring it out to the world. A digital publisher can be more flexible. At Artifex Press, we recognize that it's the very nature of the catalog raisonné to be constantly in flux. Even if the original publication contains no errors, even if the artist is deceased and there are no hidden troves of undiscovered canvases in someone's attic, the artwork lives on, and with time, the information in the catalog is out of date. Artworks are sold on the secondary market, there are new exhibitions, and new publications. The catalog raisonné stands at a point of tension between an ideal of completeness and a reality in which such completeness is impossible. I think that the digital format grapples with this fact more openly than a book does. One way I like to think of this distinction is as follows. Traditionally, a catalog raisonné is understood as an object. It's the book itself, a noun. With the advent of the digital catalog, in which the processes of archiving, researching, publishing, and updating the catalog can be easily melded, you can also think of catalog raisonné as a verb. It's a process, not simply a product. Okay. I'm now going to illustrate some of these ideas by drawing from some examples from our catalogs. Do I need to signal to you guys each time? Yeah? Okay. Okay, Chuck Close. I apologize, some of these pictures are looking a little kind of washed out on the screen, but we'll do our best. So the Chuck Close catalog raisonné was our first publication, and it's our most traditional. In late 2012, we released a catalog raisonné of Close paintings, but even then we intended to expand it with subsequent volumes of works in other mediums. The artist's paintings represent a manageable body of work, fewer than 200 pieces since 1967, when Chuck's mature phase began. At launch, the catalog contained all of these, plus a selection of student works. It also included provenance, exhibition, and literature history, as you can see on this page for Big Nude from 1967. Since the launch, we've updated the catalog with 11 new paintings, which were created after the catalog's launch. Of my case studies today, Chuck Close is the only living artist I'll discuss, though we work with several. It's worth noting that a digital catalog raisonné can be prepared for an artist who continues to produce new work at a steady rate with no expectation that this later unknown work may appear only in an addendum or second edition. This allows for a new understanding in the method and planning of a catalog raisonné and allows us to work with living artists who may have previously considered it to be a late-in-life or posthumous endeavor. In addition to adding paintings by Chuck Close, we've begun to research and in some cases publish works from other mediums. We now have a selection of daguerreotypes, and we're deep into research for new volumes on complete photo maquettes and complete drawings, which we hope to publish in 2017. At first, this expanding Close CR may sound no different than a multi-volume book published in stages, but in fact, each new volume is part of the same database, and the impact of newly added artwork records is considerable because of the ability to cross-reference and because of the nature of Close's work, in which innovations in one medium affect his output in others. A multi-volume book could never contain the interconnectedness and multiple pathways that the expanding database offers. And then quickly, we've also updated this with some other things. What I'm showing here is a screenshot of an audio and video archive, which we kind of update in more or less real time as we clear rights to materials or become aware of them. Okay, second, Agnes Martin. Her works are typically untitled, and they photograph quite poorly, which makes researching a catalog quite difficult because written records and documentary photography provide only partial clues. It's also a challenge for publishers wishing to recreate the beauty and subtlety of her artworks. Book publishers have had to deal with this problem in the past. We're confronting it now. So we've built a zoom feature. I'm going to sort of quickly go through, so you can sort of see, unfortunately, as I said, this is washed out, but it gives you a sense. There's another example. Here's an artwork record. Here it's blown up. Here's a portion of it. Here's a third. Okay, if you can just sort of stay there. The zoom feature actually allows us to have more detailed imagery than even the most beautiful books would. And I think that one of the advantages that people typically think exists for books is that the images are higher resolution. But in fact, zoom is perhaps a response to this. Moreover, this catalog can evolve as technology improves. A page in a book never changes, but all of our images will sharpen as computers employ higher resolution screens. And similarly, we can always replace older image files with new ones as cameras improve and new photographs become available. And this catalog, by the way, was edited by Tiffany Bell, who co-curated the recent Martin retrospective, which was at Tate last year and is currently at the Guggenheim in New York. Okay, finally, Solowit wall drawings, which Lindsay spoke about earlier. This will also be a book to be co-published with Yale Art Gallery. LeWitt he created his own captions format, which can we go ahead? Which you can see here. He created his own caption style. Instead of title, date, medium, dimensions, he gives the title of the work, its wall drawing number, and then information about its first installation, who drew it, where, and when. So we've customized the data structure to account for this, and we then also, can you go back? Can you go back one more? We also, unfortunately, it's blown out here. But you can see there's a little diagram at the bottom. So we also created these kind of schematics to help people know how to install them, and those appear on each page. Anyway, this just illustrates how the same work can appear in multiple installations. So this is the same artwork, but they're different installations. And so we're representing them all on a single screen, along with the diagram I just mentioned. And this catalog the artist is deceased, but these installations are going to continue being made. And so for that reason, we will continue to kind of publish and update this catalog. The list of works is fixed, but the information is going to continuously grow. And so what this means is one of the other things you can do with a digital platform is we can catalog performance, installation, and other iterative types of work in a manner that sort of more truly captures its protean nature. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Thanks very much. I look forward to meeting those of you I haven't already. And if anyone's interested, we have a computer set up in the break room, so you can check that out. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, David. And he rather threw away his punchline there, which is that you can actually get a bit more up close and personal with this software and see some of these fantastic products where we're going to be having drinks in a very short while. So thank you, David. Now it's over to Lucy Myers, who is Managing Director at Lund Humphries. Lucy.
So I will be as brief as possible. I know you've been listening for a very long time. I'm going to talk about Catalogue Raisonné as printed books. And I think I thought at this point I would be having to stand come to the defense of the printed book. But I think what's interestingly emerged from today is that there are options. There is the option of online and the book. And some projects are better suited to one, some to the other, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. So I'll come back to that. Just briefly to introduce Lund Humphreys. This is us. We are publishers of printed, very highly illustrated books on fine art and artists, with an emphasis on modern and contemporary art, and I would say probably very much on the sort of more traditional media of painting, printmaking, sculpture, drawing. Next year we're going to be launching a new contemporary painters series of monographs, which is very exciting. We also have a small list of professional books on art business, and we're launching a new list of books on architecture and design next year. Our books on artists' work are a mixture of illustrated monographs and catalogues, and some of them are monographs with catalogue elements. So I think I would say many of the books that we've published are probably not catalogue raisonné in the strict sense, but they have catalogue listings attached to them. So I'm going to also argue for a sort of hybrid form of monograph with catalogue, which is, I think, has a value. And they're all collaborative projects, and we talked about collaboration earlier, but we generally, for the books we work, our books on artists, we're working either with the artist directly or with their foundation, the Paolozzi book, for an example, or with the estate, as in the Chadwick book, or with the gallery, or with a combination of those parties. And that collaborative element involves working together to create a product that works both for the artist in terms of promoting their work, and also has appeal to a more general market. We've been publishing catalogues of artists' work for a long time, and really since 1944. And I just wanted to show the Henry Moore sculpture and drawings catalogues here, which were published in 6 volumes of sculpture and 7 volumes of drawings between 1944 and 2003. So the first sculpture volumes were published when Moore was still alive, and they were very basic listings of works. But I think they had a value at that time, and they were unusual, very unusual at that time, when it really hadn't happened before that there would be a listing of a contemporary artist in that way. And you can see, I think, here that the more catalogues became more detailed as they progressed. Certainly the drawings ones, the listings are quite full. On the other side, we have the Hans Hofmann catalogue raisonné of paintings, and that's probably our most ambitious project in its scale and its detail, its level of illustration. It's in 3 volumes in a slipcase. And we've published a lot of projects along the way, which are catalogues of sculpture, Elizabeth Frink and Lynn Chadwick, prints of Nevinson, Trevelyan, Piper, Albert Irvin, Terry Frost, Barnes Graham. And they will all vary in their level of detail as catalogues, but I think what they have in common is they are presenting a record of the artist's work, which is as complete as possible. Just to say what Lund Humphreys does, unlike Artifex, we don't get involved in the research side of catalogue raisonné. Our role is to advise on the shape of the product, to copy edit it in great detail, to design the layouts, to proof the images to ensure the highest accuracy of reproduction, and come out with a physical product that works, and then market and sell it. And we're not just packagers, we do need to see a market for the book, even if it's a specialist one. So why do we publish catalogue raisonné, and why are we still doing them in print form? Well, I think specialist publishers like us, we like reference books. They are unique collections of material. We can say this is the definitive book on the work of a particular artist. And although print catalogues will go out of date in small ways, I think if they're well researched and they're compiled after the end of an artist's life or their working life, they will continue to have value as catalogues over a long period. And they're prestigious projects. We're very proud of being associated with the Moore and the Hoffman catalogues. I think David already alluded to some advantages of print. And I think one that we see is that a print catalogue raisonné can combine elements of the monograph and catalogue, and most of ours do. So we generally include illustrated essays. We can do a lot with the design, and I think Susan talked about design of a book or a catalogue giving a flavour of the work. I think you can do that quite creatively in print, which is perhaps more difficult online. A book in general can present an easily browsable visual overview of the work, which is perhaps more difficult to do in an online catalogue. And I think that's useful to a curator, to an art historian, to a collector who wants to assess the work, who wants to look at different periods and see which are the most interesting or how the work divides. I think that print catalogue raisonnés are attractive to collectors for various reasons. I think collectors see the value in having their work reproduced in print, in a printed book. That may be because books are seen as more permanent. It may be because they're still seen as somehow trusted in a different way. And I think there's also a kind of kudos in having a printed book that looks beautiful, that you can display on your coffee table and show people. The high quality reproduction of images that you can get in a highly illustrated colour book, I think, is still the best way of reproducing sort of flat artwork like paintings and prints and drawings. You're going to get a very good quality of reproduction because the medium that you're using is very similar to the original medium. It's obvious that digital media is much better suited to cataloguing works in non-traditional media, whether it's moving image or audio material. Also, Susan talked, I think, about 3D work and trying to have a lot of different views of sculpture. I think you can do that, obviously, more easily online. And I think there are some advantages to the process of producing a printed book, in that you have deadlines, you go to print, there is a certain way in which you're forced to check information before you go to press. And so I think that can be useful. The very fact that you can't update information easily means you have to check it carefully. Having said all that, I feel that it's not a question of print or online. Online databases have a huge value, and they can have print spin-offs of many kind. So I see online databases as a resource which can feed into different kinds of standalone print publications. They might present the catalogue in a different format and foreground monograph elements, or the monograph might take a particular body of work and show it in print form. And the cataloguing process in itself and the scholarship which emerges from it can actually feed into books along the way. So a catalogue raisonné might be being prepared online and take years and years, but in the meantime, the scholarship can feed into printed book projects. Is every catalogue raisonné publishable was one of the questions we were going to answer. I will go over this very quickly. We actually have a handout in the bags, which takes you through the kinds of questions that we ask when we're reviewing catalogue raisonné projects. And many of those are the same as the questions we ask about every publishing project. But I think there are 4 key questions that we consider when trying to see whether a catalogue raisonné is publishable. The first, obviously, is there a market for the book? We do want to sell the book. We do want to feel that there is interest. And we will probably assess that by considering, first of all, the market for the art. They're not the same, but if there is interest, if there are exhibitions, that indicates that there is likely to be an interest in the catalogue raisonné. So we need to know, so is there work in public collections? Is the artist being regularly exhibited? Is there an exhibition we can tie publication in with? Are there already lots of other kinds of publications on the artist that would indicate that there is interest in the work? And if we felt that actually there was very little interest in the artist, or there was really not a large enough market, we probably would feel that the catalogue raisonné was unpublishable. The second question is, how authoritative is the catalogue? And there's been a lot of discussion about this today, I think, about approaches to cataloguing, sources, how have people gone about verifying information. That's all very relevant, I think, to the users having trust in the information in the catalogue and us knowing that it will have a long-term reference value. The third question is really, what is the scale of this catalogue raisonné? The key one is how many works are going to be in it, and that's often a difficult question, but it's the kind of key one we need to know, and that will dictate the other questions that we have to ask about how many words, how many illustrations, what's the length of the entries, what else are you putting with your catalogue. Photography, we've talked about, is another, obviously, large element of the cost, so we need to know about the availability of illustrations. And the final question is there funding available? We've talked about funding already, funding for research, but we do need funding for most catalogue raisonné projects which aren't commercial publishing projects. And that is because really of their scale, they have a fixed shape, there's a fixed number of works you have to catalogue. That can be very large and the market can be very small. So it's very difficult for us to cover the cost through sales. It's also they're very difficult projects to shape to the market. They are what they are, they have to be complete. And they sell slowly. They may have an ongoing market, but they are long-term projects, and so it takes a while to see the return through sales. And that's a lot of books to store in the warehouse. So we look at a catalogue raisonné, and it's publishable if we feel there's enough active interest in the work, if it has scholarly authority, and if the research and production costs can be supported through funding. We also consider its time scale. Catalogue raisonné can be large projects to produce. They can be very lengthy production schedules. The Hans Hofmann took us 18 months to produce, but I think it took about 16 years to research, so that's a small time in comparison. So, yes, to conclude, because I think we're almost up against timing, we're keen to publish more catalogue raisonné in print format, if that's the right format for the artist, if the artists are of significant stature, whose catalogues are being properly researched, and there is funding available to produce them economically.
Are we going to try and squeeze in a couple of questions for you and David?
A couple is fine.
Just a couple. Okay, fine. And maybe if I could ask David, great, thank you, to come back up. Now, shall I go and sit in the scary chair? The precipitous chair. Here we go. So we do have time for a couple of questions, and I think the very nice gentleman who sells so many of these books should get the first dibs.
Well, I have both an observation and a question. My observation is that we curate libraries and we build libraries for people, and we have never been able to persuade any of the libraries that we curate to subscribe to an online catalogue raisonné. Because they say, if we count this circle, the page that we read today will be the same as the page we read tomorrow. It is ephemeral and of little value to us. That's the observation. My question is, David, how do you prevent criminals hacking in to an online catalogue raisonné and putting in fakes? We have heard, but it is hearsay, last year 2 paintings were sold from online catalogue raisonnés that were hacked into them and fake. Where does the buck stop? I am advised that it stops with the publisher.
Well, to the first point, I think that I think first of all, a lot of this is changing, and I do think there is an appetite for libraries to subscribe to this. I mean, I put up on the board our advisory board, which includes the librarians at Princeton, Columbia, the Frick, and a lot of major libraries in the U.S., both academic and museums, are certainly interested in this, and I assume that there will be an international market as well. We're doing a lot of things also to be clear about, we have rules about updating this. This isn't kind of a free-for-all database. This is, we research and edit in the same way a book publisher does. I think we should be, I think everyone knows we've seen books that are not well edited, and we've seen websites that are very well edited. I was suggesting that there is an implicit bias that readers of this bring to it, but I don't think, having worked on the product, Also, having worked in print publishing, I mean, meaning book publishing, I've seen that quality really has nothing to do with the medium. Quality has to do with the effort that goes into it. And so we are going to be very transparent about the nature in which we're updating the catalogs. And I think librarians are okay about this, and they are also working on all...
My clients are not librarians.
I'm sorry?
My clients are not librarians. They're art dealers, art collectors. So they're looking at it from the point of view of an opinion at a fixed space of time, places financial value in something. So I'm not talking about institutional lives.
Okay, well, that's fair. I think that as I said, we're being transparent about what it means to make a change, and I think that this is the way a lot of these publications are going. I mean, we're not the only ones doing it. I think there already is a change in sort of understanding of it. To the second point, I mean, I would be happy to run down for people all of the things that we are doing on the security front. I don't want to get into it all, but we back up our database twice daily. Those backups are backed up. Those backups are backed up. We're going to be doing regular exports, storing it in third-party sort of deep storage. There are a lot of things that we do to protect it. Updating the catalogs is not a simple thing. That said, you're right. It is possible. It is possible, and there's no answer to the fact that it is possible for someone to hack. It's, you know, the situations you're talking about have never happened to our catalogs. What I will say, though, and I assume people understand this, that you can hack a book, right? I mean, we know, yes, you can. We know about books that are published in foreign countries where they are essentially reproducing the books without copyright permission, doing it at extremely high quality, such that the Western, let's say the Western original publisher has a difficult time telling them apart. You could do that, and you could slip in some artworks there too. I mean, this is possible.
Or you could even go into, as the legend has it, the Tate archive and lay a fake paper trail. So you can hack an archive.
You're absolutely right. Like, it is possible. It is also possible with a book. But it's possible.
Okay.
Right.
A couple more questions, because we are now out of time, and the refreshments are beckoning. We've had a lot of you, which is lovely, but I'm just going to ask this lady here first. Can't have too much of you, but...
Well, without pouring necessarily about the hackers first, my concern could be for the researchers. If I'm researching a specific artist and work, let's say on a particular day, what's the guarantee that next year on the same day, the result I'm getting is exactly the same? Because there should be a way to trace changes.
We do. We have all our catalogs have a log of updates.
So can I follow up? Sorry.
Yeah.
So if I were to look up an entry from 2 years ago, would I have all its previous editions of the entry? Would it say this bit of information was such and such in 2011 and then it changed in 2013?
It's not exactly like that, but there is a list of all the changes that you can reference. Okay, a gentleman here, then we'll come back to David.
Well, I know I keep on putting my hand up there, but
That's okay.
I really enjoyed the last two sessions. I enjoyed the whole day, but it's very, very strange to me, because I'm a scientist, also done catalogue raising, involved in catalogue raising, but a scientist, and it all seems very crazy, because the last 7 or 8 years, all major scientific publishers have a hard copy and online, and they have an additional material at the end. It's fixed additional material, and there's additional material other people can add. And so all the things you've heard this afternoon, they've all been sold by Springer and Elsevier and so on. They're making a great deal of money out of this. And there's guidelines for everybody in university who's a scientist where they can submit to. They have, mostly if they get a grant from any money, it has to be to an open access journal. They're not allowed to send that information elsewhere. So all these things I've heard, they've all been discussed a long, long time ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and it all seems so old to me, this discussion. So I know it's very cheeky. I've tried to summarize very quickly. I'd put it a lot more diplomatically if I had longer, but that's just a brief...
But a catalogue raisonné is... Thank you for being so succinct. I mean, a catalogue raisonné is an encyclopedic work. It aspires to be. It's a reference work. It's not a peer-reviewed journal article, which is the kind of thing that I think you're particularly referring to, where you know it comes out, it's peer-reviewed. You said what you said on a given day, and you can't update it, at least not except in the very special circumstances. But yeah, learn from the sciences. We must be modest, as someone said earlier. Now, David.
I actually had just one observation very quickly, which is so simple that it's almost coarse. As the art historian and cultural historian Jonathan Crary pointed out.
Jonathan who?
Jonathan Crary, C-R-A-R-Y, who's at Columbia. And I want to say, I think there's a very strong practical argument for the digital direction. But as Crary pointed out, it has become terribly obvious to me, a person of a certain age, we are living in an increasingly nightmarish age where we are literally glued to computer screens, phone screens, smartwatch screens, watching movies on computer. And the last thing I want to do is to have to do more of that.
Fantastic, fantastic. I am actually tempted at that point. Can I? Because I think that's just my cue to come over here and offer a call to action for everyone to get off behind their computer screens, get your hands not literally on, because that would be counter-curatorial practice, but very near to a work of art, whether that be a piece of installation art, photography, film, or good old-fashioned sculpture or painting, and catalogue it, and learn to love it, and bring some of the passion and scholarship and good old-fashioned high-mindedness that we've heard about today to those art historical projects. It's wonderfully inspiring to hear so many people working on so many great projects along those lines, publishers willing to put them out there, people willing to support them, people willing to sell them, and above all, people willing to write them. So thank you for coming. Thank you to our hosts, and I think David is going to have the very last word.
Just a quick few thanks. First of all, to all our speakers, some of whom have come a long way, Lindsay, Susan, Dietmar. Thank you to our moderators, Dr. Joe Melvin and Susan Cook, to our chair, Nick Tromans, to Julian Radcliffe, chair of the Art Loss Register, our supporting partner, Chelsea College of Arts, and Chelsea's Abby Vinner, who's helped coordinate the day. Colin Head at Ash Arts, who's run the audio-visual stuff. Nicholas Smirnoff at Pace for his help with some PR, and thanks also to Lucy and Lund Humphreys, our partner in putting this together. So thanks to all of you.